It was a cold November morning in Chicago, where the wind sliced through the city like an invisible blade. Brandon Smith sped through the hurried streets, his face set, eyes locked on the car's clock, 7:42. The clock of his life couldn't afford to run late, because at 8 a.m. he had a decisive meeting at the family company, a massive multinational in telecommunications. At 41, he carried the coldness of business and the weight of a legacy he had never chosen, yet it ruled his destiny. Meanwhile, in an alley not far from there, Judy Clark was pedaling her bike with the determination of someone chasing a second chance. At 35, recently divorced, she fought against time and the shadows of her past to care for her 10-year-old son Peter and restart the marketing career that fate had stubbornly tried to shut down. Traffic tightened, and the streets of Chicago drew a silent chaos, where lives on the verge of colliding drew ever closer. Judy, heart racing, her heavy backpack pressing down, felt the city's chill mix with the coldness of uncertainty. Her son Peter, left in the care of her sister and was her anchor and her strength, the reason she ran against time toward an interview that could change everything. Brandon, on the other hand, had no idea that the day ahead held something no boardroom meeting could predict. He knew about responsibilities and expectations, but he didn't know the heart that was about to break in front of him, nor the love that would rise from the wreckage of the unexpected. Fate, whimsical and unseen, was weaving its invisible thread between the impassive millionaire and the battling mother. The fateful moment struck like a blow too quick to dodge. Brandon's phone vibrated with an urgent message. He glanced down, distracted. The traffic light turned red. Just enough time for Judy to cross his path on her bike. The sound of the impact echoed down the cold street like thunder ripping through the silence of morning. Twisted bicycle. Judy unconscious on the pavement, eyes shut to a world that seemed to crumble in that instant. Brandon leapt from the car in panic, hands on his head, frantic steps circling the one fixed point where life appeared frozen. The shock of reality hit him harder than any meeting ever could. Judy was rushed to the hospital, her body fragile and silent, like a bruised flower in the middle of winter. The days that followed became a painful pause. The world outside continued its rhythm, indifferent, while inside the hospital room, time stood still. Peter, young and innocent, was taken in by his aunt, Anne, who embraced the task of caring for the boy while his mother fought silently for her life. Brandon, gripped by a guilt he hadn't expected, and a feeling he didn't yet understand, began to visit Judy every day. He spoke to her as if his words could pierce the fog of her coma, touching a heart he could only imagine. That powerful, impenetrable man revealed a rare face, the vulnerability of someone whose world had just collapsed. With each visit, Brandon brought flowers, violets, always violets, and the hospital room glowed with a deep purple hue, a quiet symbol of hope and softness amid the suffering. Peter, slowly warming to the strange, regretful man, felt a mix of fear and curiosity. Brandon spoke of his mother with sincere tenderness, sharing stories of how she used to play basketball on weekends, painting a portrait of the woman Judy had been before the accident, a woman who fought life with courage and love, and watched in silence, her heart caught somewhere between suspicion and compassion, slowly opening despite old wounds. The weeks passed slowly, like a sad song that refuses to fade from the background of the soul. Then one day, Judy opened her eyes. a moment of overwhelming relief for Brandon, who couldn't hide the quiet smile of a man witnessing a silent victory. The bond between them grew stronger, an invisible thread stitched in that small room, through whispered conversations and unspoken promises. Peter gained a new friend. Brandon gained a reason to go beyond the demands of his corporate success. And Anne, the silent guardian, saw that even in this powerful man, there was a fragility only love could reach. Before we dive deeper into this story of fate and second chances, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, hit that like button, and tell us in the comments what kind of story you'd like to see next. We want to build stories with you. Stories that stir your soul and make your heart race. Now, let's return to that silent hospital room, where Judy's life was being rewritten. Brandon continued visiting her every day, bringing not just flowers, but the kind of hope she couldn't yet see. He was a constant presence, quiet promise, proof that someone still cared, even when the world had seemingly turned its back. And the protective sister watched Brandon with sharp eyes, wary of the man who had caused so much pain. But she couldn't deny that, despite the clear weight of guilt he carried, there was something in him that reached Judy, even in the silence of her coma. Brandon spoke with an unexpected tenderness, telling stories about her son, how much Peter missed her, how deeply she was loved. With each word, an invisible bridge was being built between that hospital room and the life waiting just outside its walls. And though still nursing her sorrow, began to sense that perhaps this powerful man bore a broken heart inside his chest, quietly seeking redemption. Peter missed his mother in a way only a child can, a blend of hope and fear. Brandon's presence, though strange at first, slowly became a comfort to him, a flicker of light in the hospital's darkness. Brandon wasn't content with just visiting. He got involved. He asked about Peter, about the life Judy led before the accident. He spoke of the plans he had to help her, but never revealed his true position in the family company. He wanted Judy to achieve everything through her own talent, not out of pity. That secret Brandon held so carefully was a fine line between pride and humility. Days passed, and the color purple from the violets began to dominate the small hospital room, like a field of hope painted with patience and love. Judy lingered somewhere between the world of dreams and reality, but Brandon could feel it. Slowly, she was fighting to return. Each visit was a silent battle, a dialogue between two hearts that, even without words, had started to understand each other. He spoke of simple things, everyday life, the strength he saw in her, the promise of a different future. And seeing them together, began to notice something unexpected. Pain was starting to transform into something else, a fragile and deep bond. The hospital had become the stage for a slow transformation, where the power of love began to manifest even in the hardest moments. Brandon, despite his wealth and status, felt fragile in the face of Judy's battle. His arrogance began to fade, revealing a man learning how to be vulnerable. He knew this was just the beginning. The real challenge would be helping Judy rebuild her life and trust. But the heart sometimes has plans of its own. And the businessman was slowly losing himself in the maze of his emotions. Meanwhile, life's clock kept ticking, relentless, a reminder that time waits for no one. Brandon and Judy, separated by the coma's silence, were beginning to write a story that went beyond pain and guilt. And the quiet guardian remained watchful, torn between suspicion and hope. And Peter, the small heart beating with force, was the thread tying both worlds together. In that room where life and death brushed shoulders, love began to bloom in the shadow of pain, promising a tomorrow no one could foresee. The day Judy opened her eyes was a quiet miracle. There was no commotion, just a slow flutter of eyelids and a fragile sigh that slipped like a whisper between the sheets. Brandon was there. The first thing she saw was the man she knew only from the blurred memories of the crash. The shock was inevitable, but his gaze was so calm, so full of relief, that she had no strength left for fear. He simply smiled, holding her hand with rare gentleness, like someone holding something that might vanish. "You came back," he said, and those two words echoed within her like an embrace. In the days that followed, Judy's recovery was slow, painful, but steady. Brandon was always there, like a silent ritual. He brought flowers, always violets, and told stories of the world outside. The weather, the falling leaves in Chicago, the way Peter smiled when he talked about her. Little by little, Judy began to accept his presence, even if she didn't quite understand why this man came so often. And who once wanted him gone, now served him coffee when he arrived. It was as if Brandon had already become part of something intimate, something inevitable. Judy felt it, but didn't yet know how to name it. Peter entered the room for the first time, eyes filled with tears, his smile trembling. Judy tried to open her arms but could barely move. He was the one who threw himself on her, squeezing her neck tightly, as if trying to piece together the broken world they'd been thrown into. Brandon stood quietly in the corner, hands in his pockets, eyes moist. Peter looked at him, and for the first time called him friend. Judy was surprised, but said nothing. She just smiled. She was alive. Her son was there. And there was a stranger who seemed to care more than necessary. But maybe that's what life was trying to teach her. That some people come in quietly but leave marks as if they'd been there forever. With each new day, Judy realized there was a void inside her that was slowly being filled. Not only by Peter's presence, or the talks with Anne, but by Brandon. He seemed to know exactly what to say, and more importantly, when to say nothing. In his silences there was respect. In his eyes, something she avoided naming. One day she asked him why he kept coming. He answered with sincerity, "Because I hurt you, and I'm not leaving until I know you're okay." She didn't know what to say. Maybe because deep down she wanted him to stay, even after that. Even after the pain. It was and who noticed it first. Judy would smile when Brandon arrived. Not a wide, obvious smile, but one of those quiet smiles from the corner of the mouth, from the eyes, the kind we try to hide but simply can't. It was subtle but undeniable. And Brandon, who had once brought violets every day, now brought books, chocolates, even little notes with bad jokes that made Judy roll her eyes. But in that playful way that means you're starting to care. The truth was, he was falling in love, either without realizing it, or realizing it far too late. And Judy, scarred by the pain of divorce and years of loneliness, was starting to understand that sometimes love arrives like an accident. Literally. Brandon found out that Judy's insurance wouldn't cover her full treatment. Without hesitation, he covered every cost, quietly without her knowing. He arranged everything off the books discreetly, and found out and confronted him. But when she saw the truth in his eyes as he spoke about Judy, she didn't have the heart to stop him. She promised to stay silent. Brandon only asked, "She can't feel like she owes me anything. I just want her to be okay." It was a noble gesture, but dangerous. Because secrets, no matter how noble, are like seeds. They grow, and sooner or later they bloom, always at the wrong time. Judy came home exactly 2 months after the accident. Still fragile, the marks of recovery etched into her body and soul, but determined to take her life back, and did her best to make everything feel warm and welcoming. New blankets, fresh flowers, Judy's favorite meals. But it was Peter who brought the greatest gift, a drawing of the three of them, himself, his mother, and Brandon. Judy smiled, puzzled. "Why is Brandon in the picture?" she asked. Peter answered with the disarming simplicity only a child can offer. "Because he took care of you, Mommy. And me too." She swallowed hard, a strange warmth blooming in her chest. Gratitude, or maybe something already growing beyond that. Brandon kept showing up every day. No longer with flowers, but with pizzas, board games, and light-hearted conversations that made Judy forget her physical and emotional pain, even if just for a while. He was funny, thoughtful, discreet. And somehow, he had become part of their daily lives. Peter adored him. And more convinced that Brandon wasn't the villain of the story, watched in silence. Judy began to wonder who this man really was. He had refined manners, seemed to know about everything, but never spoke of himself. It was as if he were hiding something, and she wasn't sure if she wanted to uncover it, or just keep enjoying the safe little dream he brought with him. One night, while watching a movie, Peter fell asleep on the couch with his head in Brandon's lap. Judy, sitting beside them, watched the scene like someone witnessing something precious come into existence. "You're good with him," she whispered. Brandon just smiled. "He's an amazing kid. He's got the best parts of you." She blushed, looking away. They sat in silence for a moment, but it was the kind of silence that says a lot. He could have kissed her then, and maybe she would have let him. But he didn't. Brandon knew the time hadn't come yet. And that kind of restraint said more than any impulsive gesture ever could. It was as if he understood. Real love is built slowly, at Brandon's request, and continued keeping the secret of who he truly was. She has to be hired for her talent, not pity, not influence, he insisted. And thanks to his quiet support, a position opened up in the marketing department. Judy received the call from the company with tears in her eyes. She didn't know whether to cry from joy or disbelief. Finally, after months of closed doors, someone had seen her worth. What she didn't know was that this someone was the same man she now saw every night in her living room. Life, with all its irony and mystery, was stitching together an invisible tapestry. In her first days at the new job, Judy shone. Smart, creative, determined. She quickly became well-liked by part of the team. Brandon watched from afar. Sometimes they crossed paths in the hallway and exchanged brief, knowing smiles. But the tension was building. He knew the secret would eventually come out, and he feared what it would cause. Judy, on the other hand, felt uneasy. There was something in the way people looked at her. A few whispers she didn't understand. She started to wonder if there was something she didn't know. But she tried to focus on the work, the new chapter, and the light slowly returning to her eyes. Brandon, torn between his desire to protect her and his fear of losing her, began pulling away, quietly. Fewer visits, shorter messages. Judy felt the absence, though she couldn't understand why. Peter asked about him often, and Anne could feel something breaking in the silence. The problem with secrets is that even when born out of love, they carry a seed of pain within them. Brandon thought about telling her everything, but feared that in doing so, he'd lose the only woman who had ever truly touched his heart. And so the days passed, love growing in the silence, while time, relentless, moved closer to revealing what still remained hidden. On that cold February morning, Judy walked the company hallways with a coffee in hand and her thoughts drifting. She was feeling good, productive, hopeful. Until, passing by the break room, she overheard two colleagues chatting, unaware of her presence. "She's good, sure, but let's be honest. She's only here because she's the boss's favorite." The other one laughed. "Oh, Mr. Brandon Smith isn't stupid. Brought in the poor little accident girl. Must have felt sorry. Or maybe he had other interests." Judy froze. The coffee trembled in her hand. The name echoed in her mind like a muffled explosion. Brandon Smith, the owner. And then everything turned to smoke. The accident, the visits, the job. All of it. A lie. Her hand clenched the cup so tightly the plastic gave in. The taste of the coffee was different now. Bitter like betrayal. Without thinking, Judy stormed down the hallway to the elevator, pressing the button hard. Her hands trembled. The words echoed inside her like shards of glass. When the doors opened, she went straight to the top floor, where she knew the executive offices were. Receptionists tried to stop her, but she pushed open the office door like a storm. Brandon was on the phone. When he saw her, his face went pale. "Judy!" She raised her hand. "You lied to me." He stood up, trying to explain. "I just wanted to help you without making you feel." But she cut him off. "You put me here. You decided what I deserved. You treated me like a project, Brandon. And I thought I was earning this on my own." Her voice shook, but her eyes burned with a contained fury. Inside she was breaking. Her words were sharp, cold, precise. A last defense against the kind of disappointment that cuts too deep. Brandon tried to argue, but everything he said felt small compared to her pain. Judy left her badge on the desk, turned, and walked out without looking back. He stood frozen, eyes empty, like he'd lost his whole world in a single minute. She passed through the company with her head held high, though tears threatened to break through the wall she'd built inside herself, and tried to stop her, to get her to listen. But Judy had made up her mind. She didn't want to be the girl the boss helped. She just wanted to be herself. And Brandon, at that moment, was everything she wanted to forget. Every step she took felt like tearing apart everything they had silently built together. In the weeks that followed, Judy sank into silence. She refused visits, ignored calls, didn't even reply to Peter's messages about Brandon. It was as if she wanted to erase everything. Brandon, in turn, tried to move on, but without a soul. He started going out with Jennifer Simpson, beautiful, elegant, empty, distraction. a way to pretend it didn't hurt. But it did. Jennifer noticed. It annoyed her. "You're not here. You're with her. Always with her." And he didn't deny it. 'Cause it was true. Every place, every taste, every sound brought Judy back. And her silence was more brutal than any scream. His days, once full of purpose with Judy and Peter, had become dry, repetitive, flavorless. And his bed felt far too big for one, and tried to be a bridge. But Judy stood firm in her decision to stay away. "He lied to me and did everything behind my back like I wasn't capable. That's not love. That's control." But even as she said it, she felt the pain of contradiction. Because deep down, part of her knew Brandon wasn't a manipulator. He was a man trying to do the right thing, just in the wrong way. And little Peter watched it all. Saw his mother's light fading again. Saw his friend disappear. Saw the house return to its old colorless silence. Until he had an idea that might not work. But in his young heart it felt like the only way. Because he knew one thing. Grown-ups complicate everything. Maybe love just needs one simple chance. He waited until his mother left for the market, then quietly grabbed her phone and typed carefully, "Brandon, I need to see you. The park. Today at 5 p.m. Just the two of us." And he hit send. Then he deleted the history and sat by the window, hoping that love he had seen even before they realized it themselves, would be brave enough to come back. He didn't know what Brandon would do, but he believed in happy endings. And that afternoon, Peter sat on the bench closest to the lake, with a man's backpack in his heart, and an empty space beside him, saved for love. Brandon arrived at the park 5 minutes before 5. He wore a dark coat, the same one Judy once complimented, saying it made him look less like an executive and more like a man. The cloudy sky mirrored what he felt inside, a man carrying heavy clouds over his chest. In the distance, he saw Peter sitting on the bench, fiddling with his shoelaces. That image, the boy so small, so brave, was what made him keep walking. He sat down beside him with a calm he didn't really have. "You sent the message, didn't you?" Peter just nodded. There was no scolding, no lecture. There was a quiet respect between them, as if that boy were the guardian of the last thread of hope between him and Judy. "She doesn't want to see me," Brandon said, staring at the lake as if it might offer the right words. "But I had to come. For you, and for her." Peter looked at him with those big, serious eyes that seemed to hold more wisdom than any executive Brandon had ever met. "She thinks you lied. That you tried to control her." Brandon sighed painfully. "I tried to protect her, 'cause she taught me how to love again. But I did it the wrong way. And I deserve what I'm living now." The boy stayed silent for a while. Then he pulled a folded piece of paper from his backpack. "She wrote this. For you. But she never had the courage to give it to you." Brandon opened the letter with trembling hands. It was a letter that began with 3 words. "I love you." Judy's words cut through the paper like a sharp knife through a heart. She wrote about the fear of loving someone like Brandon, about pride, about the pain of feeling vulnerable. But in the end, she said that even though she felt hurt, she couldn't pull him out of her heart. He read in silence, eyes watering, chest heaving. "Thank you, Peter." The boy smiled with the sweetness of someone who knew he'd done something right. "She's probably coming back from the market now." Brandon stood up. The wind was blowing harder, but he didn't feel cold. He felt something else. Calling. He ran like a man who had something precious to save. A heart to find. Promise to keep. He reached the front of the house just as Judy was crossing the street, grocery bags in hand. The look of surprise on her face was immediate. She froze, as if every step he took was a musical note she recognized but never expected to hear again. He approached slowly without saying anything at first. He just handed her the letter, the one she had written. She took it with tense hands, confused. "Peter gave it to me, and I had to come. Even if it's just to hear that you never want to see me again." She read it quickly, her face changing with every line. When she finished, she lifted her eyes to him. Brandon took a deep breath. "You might not forgive me now, but I'm not giving up on you, or on what we built together." She stayed silent for a long moment. Then she dropped the grocery bags on the sidewalk, walked up to him, looked him in the eyes, so deeply that Brandon feared he might break down right there. "You made a mistake, Brandon. But so did I. 'Cause I loved you with fear. And love with fear doesn't bloom." He swallowed hard. "Then teach me. Teach me how to love the right way." Judy smiled, but it was a wet smile, full of pain and tenderness at the same time. And without another word, she hugged him, tightly, as if all the lost time finally fit into that one embrace. Brandon closed his eyes and held that moment as if he were holding the entire world. Peter watched from the window, grinning from ear to ear. Love, after all, had come back home. Months later, Judy was back at work, now fully aware of everything and proud of what she could do. Brandon didn't interfere in anything. She was the one making her own story shine. Peter got a new basketball hoop in the backyard, and on weekends the three of them played together. Amid laughter, pizzas, and flowers. No longer just violets, but also sunflowers, the kind Judy loved. A new life began to bloom. Brandon proposed not with a diamond ring, but with a handwritten letter. She said yes with tears and a kiss. Because sometimes all love needs is a second chance, watered with honesty, rebuilt with trust, sealed by someone who never gives up. And so, in that cold Chicago winter, two hearts learned to keep each other warm. Forever.